Alexander III of Macedon, commonly known as Alexander the Great, was born on either July 20th or 21, 356 BCE and died on June 10th or 11, 323 BCE. He was the king of the ancient Greek kingdom of Macedon. In Bengali, he is sometimes referred to as Alexander. In 336 BCE, at the age of just 20, Alexander succeeded his father, Philip II, and spent most of his reign engaged in extensive military campaigns across Western Asia and northeastern Africa. By the age of 30, he had created one of the largest empires of the ancient world, stretching from Egypt to northwestern India. Alexander never lost a battle in his lifetime and is regarded as one of history's greatest and most successful military commanders. Up to the age of 16, Alexander was educated by the famous philosopher Aristotle. In 335 BCE, shortly after ascending to the throne, Alexander began campaigns in the Balkan regions, re-establishing Macedonian control over Thrace and Illyria. He then moved toward Thebes and eventually destroyed the city completely. After this, Alexander was appointed commander of all Greek forces. Under this authority, he launched a pan-Hellenic campaign against Persia, fulfilling his father's long-held vision. In 334 BCE, Alexander began his invasion of the Achaemenid Persian Empire, which would last 10 years. After his Anatolian campaign, he defeated the Persians in several key battles including Issus and Gaugamela, eventually overthrowing Darius III and conquering the entire Achaemenid Empire. Following Persia's fall, the Macedonian Empire stretched from the Adriatic Sea to the Indus River. With a desire to reach the ends of the world and the Great Outer Sea, Alexander began his Indian campaign in 326 BCE, securing a major victory over King Porus, who ruled parts of present-day Punjab in the Battle of the Hydaspes River. However, his soldiers, exhausted and eager to return home, refused to march further. As a result, Alexander turned back from the banks of the Beas River. Alexander died in 323 BCE in the city of Babylon in Mesopotamia, where he had planned to establish his empire's capital. His death halted his plans for further commercial and military campaigns, including an invasion of the Arabian Peninsula. After his death, a series of internal conflicts and civil wars broke out, leading to the fragmentation of the Macedonian Empire among his generals, known as the Diadochi. Alexander was born on the 6th day of the Greek month Hecatombeon, equivalent to July 20th or 21, 356 BCE, in Pella, the capital of Macedon. He was the son of King Philip II and his fourth wife, Olympias. Although Philip had 7 or 8 wives, Olympias was considered his principal wife because she bore him a son, Alexander. There are numerous legends and myths surrounding Alexander's birth. According to the Greek biographer Plutarch, on the night of her marriage to Philip, Olympias dreamt of a thunderbolt striking her womb. Soon after, Philip had a dream where he saw his wife's womb sealed with a lion's emblem. Plutarch interpreted these supernatural signs as symbols of divine conception, suggesting that Alexander was the son of Zeus. However, many historians believe that the ambitious Olympias herself spread these stories to elevate Alexander's status as a divinely ordained ruler. On the day of Alexander's birth, Philip was planning the siege of Potidæa. He also received news that his general Parmenion had defeated the armies of Illyria and Paeonia, and that his horses had won at the Olympic Games. Legend says that on the same day, the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus, considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, burned down. A myth emerged that the goddess Artemis had left the temple to witness Alexander's birth. These stories were likely propagated after Alexander became king to portray him as superhuman and destined for greatness. In childhood, Alexander was cared for by a nurse named Lanaike. He later received education from his mother's relative Leonidas and his father's general Lysimachus. Like other noble Macedonian boys, he was trained in reading, warfare, and hunting. At the age of 13, Philip considered appointing Isocrates or Speusippus, 2 renowned Greek scholars, as Alexander's tutor, but both declined. Eventually, Philip chose Aristotle to be Alexander's teacher and provided the Temple of Mieza as their classroom. In return for educating Alexander, Philip had Aristotle's hometown of Stagae rebuilt, released its enslaved citizens, and pardoned the exiles. At the Mieza Academy, Alexander was joined by other noble boys including Ptolemy Sota, Hephaestion, and Cassander, many of whom would later become Alexander's closest friends and key military leaders. Aristotle taught them medicine, philosophy, ethics, religion, logic, and the arts. Under his guidance, Alexander developed a deep love for Homer's epic The Iliad, which he carried with him on all his future campaigns. Alexander's formal education ended at age 16, and his father appointed him regent and heir before launching a campaign against Byzantium. During Philip's absence, the Mede tribe in Thrace rebelled. Alexander swiftly defeated them and established a city called Alexandropolis Medica in their territory. After returning from his campaign, Philip sent Alexander to suppress another rebellion in southern Thrace. During a campaign against the Greek city of Perinthus, Alexander is credited with saving his father's life. In 338 BCE, Philip and Alexander campaigned together near Thebes, moving south towards Elatia. The Athenian orator Demosthenes urged Thebes to ally with Athens against Macedon. Philip proposed an alliance to Thebes, but when Thebes joined Athens instead, he launched an attack on the city of Amphissa. Following this, Philip resumed his southward march, offering peace to both Athens and Thebes, who rejected the proposal. At the Battle of Chaeronea, the Macedonian forces clashed with the combined armies of Thebes and Athens. Philip commanded the right flank while Alexander commanded the left. Philip feigned retreat, drawing the inexperienced Athenian troops into a trap and breaking their lines, while Alexander and his generals breached the band defenses. Macedon achieved a decisive victory, crushing both Athenian and Theban resistance. After this victory, Philip II continued his campaign as far as the city of Sparta, where he was received with honor by every city except Sparta. In the city of Corinth, Philip II established a League of Heaven with all the Greek city-states except Sparta, which recognized him as the chief commander of the Allied forces. Upon returning from the campaign, Philip married Cleopatra Eurydice, the niece of his general Attalus. Since any offspring from Cleopatra would be Macedonian by both parents, this marriage threatened the position of Alexander as the heir to the throne. Alexander was Macedonian only on his father's side. His mother Olympias was from Epirus. During the wedding feast, Attalus, in a drunken state, made a public remark about Philip and Cleopatra having a legitimate heir. In response, a visibly enraged Alexander threw a goblet at Attalus. However, Philip, also drunk, took Attalus's side, leading Alexander to leave Macedon. He took his mother Olympias to her brother, King Alexander I of Epirus, in the city of Dodona, and himself sought refuge with the Illyrian king. Even though Alexander had recently defeated Illyria in battle, he was still welcomed there. However, Philip never intended to disown his politically and militarily trained son. With the mediation of a family friend named Demaratus, Alexander returned to Macedon 6 months later. The following year, Pixoderus, the satrap of Caria in Persia, offered a marriage alliance between his eldest daughter and Philip's illegitimate son Aridaeus. Fearing that Aridaeus might be considered the heir to the throne, Alexander secretly sent a Corinthian actor named Thessalus to Pixoderus with a proposal to offer the daughter's hand to him instead. Upon discovering this, Philip rejected the marriage alliance and had Thessalus imprisoned. In 336 BCE, during the wedding between King Alexander I of Epirus and Philip's daughter Cleopatra, Philip II was assassinated by his chief bodyguard Pausanias. Pausanias was killed while fleeing. With the support of the Macedonian nobility and military, Alexander ascended to the throne at the age of just 20. As king, Alexander swiftly eliminated potential rivals. He had the former Macedonian king Amyntas IV executed. 2 nobles, Heramenes and Arabius, were sentenced to death for their alleged involvement in Philip's assassination. Olympias had Cleopatra Eurydice's 2 children Europa and Carinus killed, leading to Cleopatra Eurydice's likely suicide. Alexander also ordered the execution of the general Attalus, possibly to avenge past insults. However, Alexander spared Aridaeus, considering his mental impairment. News of Philip's death sparked rebellions in Thebes, Athens, and Thrace. Alexander responded quickly. With 3,000 cavalry, he marched south toward Thessaly. The Thessalian army had positioned itself in a mountain pass between Mount Olympus and Mount Ossa. Alexander ordered his troops to scale Mount Ossa, and the next day the Thessalians, finding the Macedonians behind them, surrendered immediately. Alexander continued south toward the Peloponnese. At Thermopylae, he was acknowledged as the leader of the League of Heaven. Upon reaching Corinth, Athens sued for peace and Alexander pardoned the rebels. It was here that his famous encounter with the philosopher Diogenes occurred. In Corinth, he was officially declared the supreme commander of the Greek forces against Persia. Balkan Campaign. Before launching his Asian expedition, Alexander sought to secure his northern borders. In the spring of 335 BCE, he marched east from Amphipolis and defeated the Thracian army at the foot of the Haemus Mountains. His forces then advanced into the land of the Triballi and defeated them near the Liginus River. After 3 days of continuous marching, Alexander crossed the Danube at night and launched a surprise attack on the Getae, defeating them. Meanwhile, the kings of Illyria, Cletus and Glaucias, declared rebellion against Alexander. The Macedonian army marched west and defeated them, thus securing the northern frontier. During Alexander's northern campaign, Thebes and Athens revolted again. Alexander marched south and Thebes declared war but was defeated. Alexander then destroyed the city of Thebes. Faced with this, Athens surrendered and peace was temporarily restored in Greece. Alexander appointed Antipater as regent and prepared for his campaign in Asia. Asia Campaign. In 334 BCE, Alexander crossed the Hellespont with approximately 48,100 infantry, 6,100 cavalry, and a fleet of 120 ships manned by 38,000 sailors from Macedonia, Thrace, Illyria, and Paeonia. Upon landing on Asian soil, he threw a spear and declared he had accepted Asia as a gift from the gods. On April 8, he achieved his first major victory at the Battle of the Granicus, after which the Persian provincial capital Sardis surrendered. Moving along the Ionian coast, Alexander granted autonomy to several cities. He had to employ tactical brilliance to capture the Persian-occupied city of Miletus. Further south, Alexander laid siege to Halicarnassus, where he faced Persian satrap Orontabates and the Rhodian general Memnon. Eventually, the enemy was forced to flee by sea. Alexander appointed Ada as the governor of Caria. From Halicarnassus, he marched through the mountains of Lycia and the plains of Pamphylia, capturing all the coastal cities. With no significant ports remaining, he turned inland. In Temessos, he occupied Pisidia without much destruction. At Gordium, the ancient capital of Phrygia, Alexander encountered the legendary Gordian knot, which only the ruler of Asia was said to be able to untie. According to legend, Alexander sliced it with his sword. In 333 BCE, Alexander moved from Taurus to Cilicia. After a period of illness, he marched towards Syria. Rather than confront Darius III's massive army directly, he returned to Cilicia and defeated Darius III at the Battle of Issus. Darius fled the battlefield, abandoning his mother, wife, 2 daughters, and much of his wealth. Darius offered a peace treaty including a ransom of 10,000 talents in land, but Alexander, now self-declared Lord of Asia, refused. Alexander then marched down the coast of Syria and the Levant, laying siege to Tyre in 332 BCE. After a long and difficult campaign, he captured the city, executed all able-bodied men, and sold the women and children into slavery. He then turned to Egypt, which mostly surrendered without resistance. He spared Jerusalem and marched south. In Gaza, however, he faced heavy resistance. The fortified city atop a hill took 3 assaults to fall, during which Alexander was seriously wounded. As with Tyre, he executed all the fighting men and sold the rest into slavery. In Egypt. Upon entering Egypt in 332 BCE, Alexander was welcomed as a liberator. In the Siwa oasis of Libya, he was declared the son of the god Ammon. To reinforce his divine status, Alexander's image on coins featured him with ram horns. While in Egypt, he founded Alexandria, which would become a major city. Final conquests. In 331 BCE, Alexander left Egypt and moved east toward Mesopotamia. At the Battle of Gaugamela, he defeated Darius III once again. Darius fled and was pursued to Arbela. This battle was the decisive conflict between the 2 powers. Darius sought refuge in the mountains of Media, and Alexander entered Babylon. From there, he went to Susa, another Achaemenid capital, and seized its legendary treasury. He then sent part of his army via the royal road to Persepolis, the Persian capital, while he himself took a more direct route with elite forces. He defeated the Persian army led by Ariobarzanes and entered Persepolis. There, Alexander allowed his troops to loot the city, and after 5 months, the palace of Xerxes I was set ablaze, leaving much of the city in ruins. Alexander pursued Darius III through Media and Parthia. During this time, Darius was captured by Bessus, the satrap of Bactria, who eventually killed him and declared himself Darius's successor. Alexander gave Darius a royal burial among the Achaemenid kings and claimed that Darius had named him as his heir before his death. Declaring Bessus a traitor, Alexander pursued him deep into Central Asia, founding several cities named Alexandria along the way. He conquered Media, Parthia, Arya, Drangiana, Arachosia, Bactria, and Scythia. In 329 BCE, Bessus was betrayed by Spitamenes and handed over to Ptolemy, who executed him. Later, while Alexander was battling nomadic horsemen in the region of the Jaxartes River, Spitamenes revolted in Sogdiana. After defeating the Scythians, Alexander crushed the rebellion at the Battle of Gabai, and Spitamenes was killed by his own men. Following the conquest of Persia, Alexander introduced several Persian customs in his court, including royal robes, prostration, and hand-kissing. These practices upset many Greeks, who believed Alexander was trying to elevate himself to divine status. Due to this discontent, Alexander eventually abandoned such customs. A conspiracy to assassinate Alexander was uncovered, leading to the execution of one of his generals named Philotas. To prevent future revenge, Alexander also ordered the killing of Philotas's father Parmenion, who was in charge of the royal treasury in the Hyrcania region. Later, in the region of Margiana, Alexander, while drunk, got involved in an argument and personally killed his general Cletus, who had saved his life at the Battle of the Granicus. Subsequently, during the campaign in Central Asia, a second assassination conspiracy against him was discovered. The historian Callisthenes, who was present at Alexander's court, was accused of being involved in this conspiracy, although historians differ about his actual involvement. Alexander the Great's invasion of India marks a significant chapter in Indian history. After his conquest of Persia, he began his Indian campaign. In 331 BCE, he attacked the Persian Empire, which then extended up to the Indus River. Prior to Alexander's invasion, northwest India was divided into many warring kingdoms. These kingdoms were too fragmented to form a united front against the foreign invader. By 328 BCE, Alexander had taken control of the entire Persian Empire and Afghanistan. In 327 BCE, he crossed the Hindu Kush Mountains and moved toward India. In 326 BCE, he entered India, defeating the Ashvaka tribe and their king Arka, and receiving the voluntary surrender of the ruler of Taxila. King Porus of the Jhelum River region fought bravely but was ultimately defeated. Alexander advanced along the banks of the Ravi River and captured the territories up to the Beas River. On his return journey, he secured Balochistan and Punjab, and all the lands between the Jhelum and Indus rivers came under his control. Alexander stayed in India for approximately 19 months. After his departure, Greek rule was maintained in the conquered territories for about 2 more years. Shortly after leaving India, Alexander died prematurely in Babylon in 323 BCE. Meanwhile, under Chandragupta Maurya, the Maurya Empire was established, which quickly ended Greek rule in Punjab. Alexander the Great conquered one kingdom after another from distant Greece through Iran and Afghanistan, reaching Punjab in India. The core Indian kingdom beyond the Beas River was Gangaradai, situated in the territory of the Ganges River. Had Alexander conquered Gangaradai, the entire Indian subcontinent might have fallen under his control. Local rulers informed Alexander about the wealth and invincible armies of the opposite bank. The king of Gangaradai prepared for war to stop Alexander's advance, gathering a massive army on the other side of the river. Greek and Latin historians' accounts of Gangaradai bear many similarities. Megasthenes, 350 to 290 BCE, who was a general under Alexander and later a Greek ambassador to India during the reign of Seleucus, wrote that Gangaradai had a large elephant core and was never defeated by foreign powers. Other kingdoms feared the strength and number of Gangaradai's elephants. Diodorus, 90 to 30 BCE, wrote that among all Indian nations, Gangaradai was the greatest. Knowing that the Gangaradai king commanded 4,000 war elephants, Alexander avoided direct battle. Both Diodorus and Quintus Curtius Rufus mentioned Gangaridae's military strength: 200,000 infantry, 20,000 cavalry, 2,000 chariots, and 3,000 to 4,000 elephants. Greek and Latin sources name the Gangaridae king as Agrams, son of a Baba named Nichkaladbava. Hindu Puranas call him Mahapadmanandan. Buddhist texts Mahabodhivamsa refer to him as Ugrasena, a powerful ruler with a formidable army. The Jain text Hemchandra's appendix calls Mahapadmananda Napit Kumar, meaning born of a Baba caste, describing him as a Shudra-born ruler who conquered all Kshatriyas. Alexander held a council with his army to discuss the plan of attacking Gangaridae and tried to inspire his troops. However, after years of continuous fighting, the soldiers were exhausted. They feared facing the huge army and elephants across the river. The battle with Porus had also dampened the Macedonians' morale. With just 20,000 infantry and 2,000 cavalry, driving off a much larger enemy was difficult. When Alexander insisted on crossing the Ganges, the soldiers violently opposed it. They said the kings of Gandhara and Persia had armies of 80,000 horsemen, 200,000 infantry, 8,000 chariots, and 6,000 war elephants waiting for them. The soldiers, thinking of their families and homeland, refused to cross the Beas River and risk their lives. Thus, the Greek army's victorious march stopped at the Beas River in Punjab. Alexander then ordered the Greek army to return to Macedon. The famous Bengali historian Dr. Niharanjan Roy wrote, "It is well known today that news of the large army and treasury of the Gangaridae kingdom reached Alexander's camp, and this was an important factor, among other reasons, in his decision not to advance eastward beyond the Beas but to return to Babylon." Alexander died in Babylon on June 11 or 12, 323 BCE at the age of 32 in the palace of the second Nebuchadnezzar. Two slightly different versions of his death are found. According to Plutarch, about 14 days before his death, Alexander arranged entertainment by his admiral Nearchus. He spent that night and the next day drinking with Medius of Larissa. Then he developed a fever that worsened progressively. Eventually, he lost the ability to speak. Concerned soldiers were allowed to pass by him. He silently motioned to them with his hand. The second version says that after drinking a large vessel of undiluted wine in honor of Heracles, he suffered severe pain and was ill for 11 days before dying. This version does not mention a fever but describes intense agony. The historian Arrian supports this, though Plutarch rejects it. Considering the Macedonian nobility's history of political killings, many accounts suggest that Alexander's death might have involved poisoning. Diodorus, Plutarch, Arrian, and Justin all mention the possibility of assassination by poison. Justin claims Alexander was poisoned in a conspiracy, but Plutarch calls this claim fabricated. Diodorus and Arrian note the theory only for completeness. Still, the accounts implicitly point to Antipater as a likely conspirator, since he had recently been dismissed as Macedon's viceroy and had a tense relationship with Olympias. Antipater may have secretly poisoned Alexander through his son and Alexander's wine-bearer Iolaus after summoning him to Babylon. Some even suspect Aristotle's involvement in the plot. The strongest argument against poisoning is that Alexander's illness lasted 12 days, which is unusually long for poison to act effectively. However, in 2003, in a BBC documentary about Alexander's death, Leo Shep of New Zealand's National Poison Centre suggested the use of Veratrum album, a plant known since ancient times as the poison. Shep's 2014 article in Clinical Toxicology notes that symptoms caused by Veratrum album poisoning match those described in Alexander's death story. This poison's effects can last a long time, making it plausible. Another 2010 hypothesis proposed that Alexander's death symptoms matched poisoning by drinking water contaminated with calichemicin bacteria, found in the Styx River region of Arcadia, Greece. Natural causes such as malaria, typhoid fever, and other illnesses have also been suggested. A 1998 article in the New England Journal of Medicine attributes his death to typhoid complicated by bowel perforation. Other recent analyses suggest pyogenic spondylitis or meningitis. West Nile virus and Guillain-Barré syndrome symptoms have also been considered. The long illness could have been aggravated by his heavy drinking and severe wounds. Alexander's intense psychological distress after the death of his close friend Hephaestion may also have contributed to his health decline. After his death, Alexander's body was first placed in a golden sarcophagus shaped like a human body and filled with honey. Later, it was moved to another elaborately crafted golden coffin. According to the historian Elian, a soothsayer named Aristander prophesied that the place where Alexander would be buried would remain eternally prosperous and unconquerable by enemies. However, Alexander's successors all wanted to keep his body to legitimize their own rule, as burial of a former king's body was then considered a royal right of the successor.